The hour of 6:30, having come and gone.
Sorry.
I will call to order the Common Council meeting of Tuesday, December 9th, 2025, and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Alder Tischler.
I'm here.
Tischler's here. Verveer.
Here.
Verveer's here. Vitiver. Vitiver's here. Duncan.
Here.
Duncan is here. Evers. Evers is here. Field.
Here.
Field is here. Figueroa Cole. Figueroa Cole is here. Glenn. Here. Glenn is here. Govindarajan. Govindarajan is here. Ugair. Here. Ugair is here. Harrington McKinney, currently absent. Mankella. Here. Mankella is here. Knox.
Here.
Knox is here. Madison.
Here.
Madison's here. Martinez Rutherford. Martinez Rutherford is here. Matthews.
Here.
Matthews is here. Mayor.
Here.
Mayor is here. O'Brien. O'Brien is here. Okovich. Okovich is here. Pritchett.
Here.
Pritchett is here. Madam Mayor, we have quorum.
Thank you. As usual, I'll remind us that we're here to do the business of the residents of Madison and ask that we please do that with grace and kindness, and that all concerned refrain from using profanity in your remarks. We have several wonderful ways to start this evening's meeting, and because we never want to save the best for last, we are starting with it first. And that is item 1, Legistar 90971, awarding the 19th annual Jeffrey Clay Erlanger Civility in Public Discourse Award to Eve Galanter. President Vitiver.
Whereas the Madison Common Council created the Jeffrey Clay Erlanger Civility and Public Discourse Award in memory of Jeffrey Erlanger's contributions to the city of Madison, and whereas the Jeffrey Clay Erlanger Civility and Public Discourse Award Committee has selected Eve Galanter as recipient of the 2025 award. She is an individual who exemplifies the values that are fundamental to this award and were so admirably demonstrated by Jeff. And whereas Eve Galanter has been a civic leader in the Madison community in many varied and valuable ways for more than 4 decades. Whereas Ms. Galanter is the founder of Wisconsin Civic Games, a statewide competition on civic knowledge for teams of high school students to advance civic and civil engagement among young people. The purpose of the games is to both educate young people about the U.S. and Wisconsin constitutions and to feel empowered to contribute to their communities in meaningful, thoughtful, and discerning ways. Whereas in 2021, when in-person competitions could not be held, Ms. Galanter created the editorial writing and cartoon contest for middle and high school students with submissions based on First Amendment rights and winning entries published in newspapers across the state. Whereas Ms. Galanter served 4 terms on the Madison Common Council, including 1 term as the council president. Since then, she turned her extensive knowledge of Madison to hosting district reports on the Madison City Channel for many years, interviewing alders and city staff. During the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns, she provided the community with essential, accurate, and objective information about referendums and redistricting, broadcasting virtual interviews with city staff experts on a multitude of topics. Whereas Ms. Galanter is the past president of the Madison Civics Club, University of Wisconsin-Madison Hillel Foundation, YWCA of Madison Foundation, Wisconsin Women in Government, Tempo Madison, and the Wisconsin Women's Network, where she successfully launched the Women's Policy Institute, which trains women community leaders across Wisconsin to be effective public policy advocates. She also served 9 years on the Madison Public Library Board, including 2 terms as president, and on the boards of the Capital Times Kids Fund and Friends of PBS Wisconsin as vice chair of the Public Policy Committee of the United Way of Dane County, and as a member of the Government Relations Committee of Downtown Madison, Inc. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Eve Galanter has been chosen to receive the 19th Annual Jeffrey Clay Erlanger Civility in Public Discourse Award, and be it further resolved that Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway and the Common Council of the City of Madison, Wisconsin, congratulate and thank Eve for all she has done and continues to do for our Madison community.
Thank you, President Vitiver. I believe that we have a short video to introduce the award before we introduce our awardee.
When I was 5 years old, I was going to have surgery called a spinal fusion. And so my parents asked me what it was that I wanted to do before the surgery. They were expecting me to say, I wanted to go to an amusement park. My answer was I wanted to meet Mr. Rogers.
Would you show me how you make your chair go?
Okay, sure. We didn't do any rehearsal. He basically just told me, like, I'm gonna ask you why you're in a wheelchair, and you might sing a song, and we'll just let it roll. And I said, all right.
Not your fancy chair. That's just beside you.
Mr. Rogers made me feel as if he was talking only to me. There's obviously things I can't do, but it doesn't really matter as much what I can't do. It's what I can do. That's how I try and live my life.
And it is you I like, Jeff.
Thank you. And now I would like to invite the Erlangers and Eve to speak if you would like.
Hi, everyone. Here we are again. It's such a thrill that it's 19 years now, and that every year, same old thing. If we ever needed this award, we need it now. And Pam and I are just thrilled that Eve is this year's winner, honoree, especially because she was a role model for Jeff. And so it feels like the award has come full circle. And that's a very good feeling. So I don't want to take up your time. Eve will have important things to say.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Eve Galanter. Now a round of applause, please.
Thank you, Mayor Rose Conway, Council President Vitiver, and members of the Common Council for this award in honor of Jeffrey Erlanger, with special thanks to Howie and Pam, whose son Jeff displayed not only civility in public discourse, but also a strength and a determination in everyday life that few of us ever could or will match. More than 40 years ago, I began sitting in that empty aisle seat in the second row, the fabulous all-woman second row at council meetings. We debated, and we agreed, and we disagreed. We voted, and then occasionally, after adjournment, many of us stopped by a local establishment for refreshments and conversation. No city business was discussed, just talk about our families, our jobs, our everyday lives. We really got to know each other. And today, many of us are still in touch and are friends. I hope that many of you serving on the council will enjoy similar experiences with your colleagues as a result of your civic and civil engagement while serving the community. It is an unmatched experience and benefit of public service. For many years, I began speeches to organizations saying, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. After they stopped laughing, I would launch into things I could and couldn't do to assist them. I learned, and so did they. Meanwhile, at home, my 3 kids grew up discussing and sometimes arguing with me at the dinner table about upcoming issues or votes I'd cast. And through that experience, I believe civic and civil engagement were fostered, as is evident with their current occupations in public education, public health, and the rule of law. I am so grateful to all of you that you chose me to receive this award for my commitment to public service and volunteer efforts in the community, and I will do my best to be worthy of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve. Let's do a bit of business first. We'll take it as moved by President Vitiver and seconded by Vice President Govindarajan. And I imagine that some of you might want to say something about this resolution. So moved and seconded. Is there discussion? President Vitiver.
So in addition to nominating Eve for this award for actually several years, I also just want to publicly give Eve my thanks. She has served as a mentor to me as I moved into this role, both as an alder, but also as a member of the Jewish community, and the way that those places sometimes intersect and sometimes come in conflict. And so Eve has been really a valued mentor and advisor to me over time. She has been gracious with her time, just given me so much over the years. And I'm really grateful to not only have you as an advisor, but also as a member of my district.
Thank you, President Vitiver. Alder Revere.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I want to begin by saying a few words about my friend, Jeff Erlanger, especially for our colleagues that are new and weren't with us a year ago. So for those that weren't on the council at this time a year ago, this annual award is presented at the council meeting closest to Jeff's birthday, which is November 30th, if I remember correctly. To show you how beloved Jeff was and what an impact he had on so many of us in City Hall at the time he tragically died in 2007 at the age of 36, the mayor and council at the time created this award in his honor and memory. Jeff served, like Eve, on several city committees. And Eve did so, and I'll get to Eve in a minute. Don't worry, Eve. But as a resident member, as Eve did after she left the council, and in his time on board committee and commissions, including chairing one of those committees, he had quite a record of accomplishment. I had the pleasure of first meeting Jeff because he lived downtown and was, among other things, president of what was then the State Langdon Neighborhood Association. The fact of the matter is that Jeff very much had a commitment to community building and advocacy, and he always did so with a smile on his face, as civilly as anyone could ever imagine. So that's what this award is all about. I appreciate that it's gone on all these many years. It's hard to believe that it's been, now this is the 19th annual award, and I really want to acknowledge, as I have in prior years, Pam and Howie Erlanger for keeping Jeff's spirit alive for all of us in this building and in the community, and reminding us of how, as you said, Howie, in your remarks, how important civility is now more than ever. Among other things, for our community, Pam and Howie led the successful fundraising campaign for the fully accessible playground at Rennebaum Park a few years ago. And Pam, I appreciate that you've always agreed to serve on the award committee with whoever the council president and happens to be, and other members of the committee. So I really appreciate all that the two of you do in honor of your son. As it relates to our very, very well-deserved honoree tonight, another friend, Eve Galanter. Eve really exemplifies what this award is about. And it is so well-deserved. When I first greeted Eve tonight walking to the chamber, I was like, why in the world didn't you receive this years ago? I guess we save it, as the mayor said earlier, kind of saved the best for, this is not going to be the last by any means, but we saved it. But as the resolution, I would say, only touched the surface of Eve's amazing work for our community during her lifetime. Eve, you are a civic volunteer extraordinaire. You've been a champion of good government. You stole my line that I'm with the government and I'm here to help. I was going to mention that. You already said it first, which is great. But Eve, I'm convinced, and I'm sure her current alder would agree, that Eve is so amazing that she could have sat in this chamber as long as she wanted. I'm sure the constituents of her district would have had her as long as she wanted. She did so much in city government. No, our terms did not overlap. Some of you might be thinking that, but I know that she was very beloved by her colleagues. One of them is here tonight, former Council President Ann Monks is here to honor former Council President Eve Galanter. The only reason why Eve left the council in 1989 was because she was asked by Senator Herb Kohl to be the regional director for our area and manage his office here on the Capitol Square. And that's where I first met Eve. So she didn't run for re-election because she had this great opportunity to serve the people statewide with Senator Kohl. But to show how involved Eve was, I vividly remember meeting Eve when I was in student government as an undergrad during her tenure working for the senator. And then you can imagine how much pleasure I had when I was elected to this body, and she was one of the amazing hosts of this great Madison City Channel program called District Reports. And I believe, Mayor, you and I might be the only ones besides Finance Director Schmidtke who starred in the finale show to explain the successful city financial referendum to appear on District Reports. But for those that don't know, it was a show that aired immediately before every single council meeting, and it was hosted by Eve and a couple of other former members of this body. And I thought it was a delightful program. A lot of folks mentioned it to me, and sadly, with the pandemic, like so many other things, it fell by the wayside and went away. It's something that I feel badly, Eve, that we never acknowledged formally on this council floor when District Reports officially was ended. Again, with Director Schmidtke, perhaps his finale appearance explaining the referendum, but it was great having you explain the issues of the day, including everything that was on the council agenda that folks were about to watch. It was, I thought, a terrific program, and Eve was so dedicated. She even showed up in a wheelchair once, I remember, after she had an accident, probably in a winter night like we might be getting tonight. But in any event, after all that, I just want to highlight, and again, her accomplishments are so much, her volunteerism, of course, Wisconsin Civic Games being a huge accomplishment that continues to this day. But the fact that Eve served then on city committees for a full decade, and the amount of work that Eve did for the public libraries here is, I think, amazing, and was such a dedicated to the library board. And if it wasn't for it being a full decade there, I'm sure would also serve on that board to this day. I had the pleasure of serving with Eve then on the Committee on Aging for about a year before that committee was then merged with another committee, as we know. So the bottom line is, Eve, this award is so well deserved. On behalf of all of us in the community, we can't thank you enough for all that you have done and continue to do for our community, and do so in such a civil way, just like Jeff Erlanger, always with a smile on your face. I'm just so thrilled that we're able to honor you tonight. So thanks very much for all you doing and for us in this community, Eve. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder Verveer. No further alders in the queue, so it has been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording an enthusiastic vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote, and congratulations again, Eve. Thank you for everything you've done for our community. And if you want to step up, the council president will give you the actual resolution. So there'll be a little photo session outside, and there's a frame where we add Eve's name to the award recipients, which will hang out in the hallway, as it has, you may have noticed, in the past. So they will take pictures out there. And we will continue on then with our meeting. And that brings us to item 2, which is Legistar 91117, one of our regularly scheduled poetry readings. And today we have Juge Ilepe reading Ephemeral Lake, Death Valley. I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting me be here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to be here to bring a poem into this space. This is a poem I wrote. It's called Ephemeral Lake, Death Valley. It was written during a big atmospheric river fall in California, where I'm from, but written here in Wisconsin. So marrying those two places, Ephemeral Lake, Death Valley. I hear the desert flows with rain. Honeysuckle crowds the corners of spring streams. Birds arrive like cerebral songs I'm reminded I've forgotten. And the rovers send dispatches from Mars. See the shadow of sun leave one hemisphere for another. Watch a deluge of milk barrel the planet's eye. Satellites deny a drought with their imaging. The Sierras carry white animals on their backs, and it's all super blooms and basins now. I trudge through space, lying in the driftless, with bone-fingered branches crowding my periphery, with hills that make the sky seem like an obvious globe. In the blue above, an eagle circles me. I think because I'm so good at clutching the earth, at being like death, but his circles circumvent my deception. He is carried off by wind in spiraling apogee. What I know of the world becomes trivial and then becomes a lie. Graffiti in the driveway, antlers in the mouth of a dog. Thank you.
Thank you. You're getting a round of applause here in the room. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Our next item is disclosures and recusals. Are there any disclosures or recusals on tonight's agenda? Alder Field.
Thank you, Mayor. A disclosure on 2 items tonight, numbers 10 and 80 on the agenda. I work at UW-Madison, but that will not affect my vote on those.
Thank you, Alder Field. Did you get both those items?
10 and what?
Alder, items 10 and
80 was the other one.
80? Yep, thank you. Alder Matthews.
I also work at UW-Madison, but that won't impact my decision for items 10 or 80.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Knox.
Recusal on item 62. I work at the Overture Center for the Arts.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Tischler.
Yes, I also work at the university, and on 10 and 80, it won't affect my vote.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other disclosures or recusals? Alder Revere.
Thank you, Mayor. I will disclose that I am a city appointee to the Overture Center for the Arts Foundation Board as it relates to item 62. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Seeing no others, then President Vitiver will move on to the presentation of the consent agenda.
The consent agenda is moved with the recommended action listed for each item on the agenda, and except items that have registrants wishing to speak and items that alders have separated out for discussion or debate purposes. This document lists supermajority items, agenda items with recommendations different from the agenda, items for exclusion, items introduced from the floor, and agenda items with corrections. Agenda items that are supermajority items. Item 69, Legislative File 90829, authorizing the Economic Development Division to accept a grant of up to $250,000 from WEDC's Small Business Development Grant Program, and if awarded, amending the 2025 Economic Development Division's operating budget by up to $250,000 and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a contract with WEDC for the grant. 15 votes required. Item 79, Legislative File 90967, Year-End Appropriation Resolution amending the 2025 adopted operating budget by taking the following actions. Transferring $2.1 million from the general fund contingent reserve and $4.4 million from other general fund underspending to meet projected shortfalls in agency budgets. Appropriating $1 million for a shelter endowment funded through transfers of agency underspending and contingent reserve. Making other transfers of appropriations within and across agency budgets, and making revenue adjustments to non-general fund agencies based on third quarter projections. Amending the 2025 adopted capital budget by taking the following actions. Appropriating funding from non-borrowing sources to various capital projects, transferring budget authority across major projects, and transferring general obligation borrowing proceeds against capital projects to comply with federal arbitrage rules, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement for a shelter endowment. 15 votes required. Following agenda items have recommendations different from the agenda. Item 11, Legislative File 90552, Substitute, amending subsections of Chapter 28 of the Madison General Ordinances related to housing and auto-oriented uses in the Transit-Oriented Development Overlay District. Agenda correction, it has 14 votes required. Item 54, Legislative File 90754, repealing Section 33.28 of the Madison General Ordinances related to the City County Schools Collaborative Committee. The recommendation from the Common Council Executive Committee is to approve. Item 55, Legislative File 90716, authorizing the City of Madison on behalf of the Dane County Continuum of Care to accept an aggregate EHH grant award of up to $625,455 from the State of Wisconsin Department of Administration, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute agreements with specific Dane County COC agencies selected by the COC Board of Directors to receive the EHH funds. The recommendation is to adopt. Item 56, Legislative File 90963, approving the carry forward due to unanticipated delays in the execution of associated fiscal year 2025 grant agreements between the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the City of Madison of previously authorized 2025 subrecipient contracts funded by the city's annual federal formula CDBG, Home, and ESG grant allocations from HUD, approving an extension of the period of performance through December 31st, 2026 for each of the affected contracts, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute 2025-26 contracts and/or contract amendments with each of the identified subrecipient agencies as appropriate once fully executed fiscal year 25 grant agreements have been received from HUD. Recommendation is to adopt. Item 57, Legislative File 90964, authorizing an amendment to RES 25-00481, Legistar 89378, to increase the amount of the Affordable Housing Fund loan for the CDA Monona Shores Rehabilitation Project from up to $360,000 to up to $438,750, with the total combined MRCDC and CDA allocations not to exceed $2 million in AHF funds, and authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to enter into loan agreements as appropriate. Recommendation is to adopt. Item 58, Legislative File 90965, awarding up to $13,963,000 from the Affordable Housing Fund to support 4 affordable housing development projects selected through a city request for proposals process that will support construction of approximately 425 units of new rental housing in Madison, 263 of which will be affordable, and authorizing the execution of related loan agreements. Recommendation is to adopt. The following agenda items have been excluded by request of alders or speakers registered by noon. Item 7, Legislative File 90845, approving plan specifications and schedules of assessments for Pontiac Trail, Boston Court, Rosewood Circle, and Nokomis Circle Assessment District in 2025. That's in District 10. We have speakers registered. Item 9, Legislative File 90539, creating Section 28.022-00734 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 501 North Whitney Way from NMX District to TSS District, District 11. Speakers are registered. Item 11, Legislative File 90552, Substitute, amending sections of Chapter 28 of the Madison General Ordinances related to housing and auto-oriented uses in the Transit-Oriented Development Overlay District. Speakers registered. Item 16, legislative file 90557, substitute, amending sections within Chapter 16 and 28 of the Madison General Ordinances to create cottage courts. Speakers registered. Item 59, legislative file 89942, adopting the updated ADA transition plan. We will have a presentation. 2 items introduced from the floor. Legislative file 91152, documenting policies for food production on city-owned land. That will go to, these are the correct dates, Madison Food Policy Council on 121, Sustainable Madison on 126, Board of Public Works on 128, Water Utility Board on 128, Board of Park Commissioners on 211, and Common Council on 224. Legislative file 91175, 2026-27, appointment of election inspectors. That will come back to council on the 13th.
Thank you, President Vitiver. Are there any other items that alders would like to have excluded from the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, then let me just run through that again quickly to make sure we've got everything. Yeah. On the following are supermajority items. Items 69 and 79 require 15 votes. Item 11 requires 14 votes, and that is a correction on the agenda as well. The recommendation on items 54, 55, 56, 57, and 58 is to adopt. The following items are excluded. Item 7, 9, 11, 16, and 59. And I will note that we do have a registrant who registered wishing to speak on item 8, but has let us know that they are available to answer questions and don't need to speak. And then we have 2 items that are being introduced from the floor. Anything else on the consent agenda? If not, President Vitiver, a motion, please. Moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? I'm sorry? Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. And we will go on then to public comment. Our first item for public comment is item 7, which is approving plan specifications and a schedule of assessments for Pontiac Trail, Boston Court, Rosewood Circle, and Nokomis Circle Assessment District of 2025 in District 10. We have several registrants wishing to speak on this item. Our first registrant is Alan Shackelford of District 10, to be followed by Mia Starling, to be followed by Nelson Holmberg. Do we have Alan?
Yes, I'm right here.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Al Shackelford, and I live on Pontiac Trail. And along with many of my neighbors, I oppose the Pontiac Trail Road reconstruction plan. Pontiac Trail is currently 20 feet wide. The proposed curbed concrete street with double sidewalks would almost triple the width of the footprint. It would gobble up mature trees, gardens, and greenery. It would severely damage, if not destroy, the peaceful, natural, rustic character of this historic neighborhood. On top of that, my neighbors and I got hit with whopping assessments. Some of my neighbors will have to pay $10,000, $12,000, even $14,000 for this project. We've spoken at 4 other meetings. We've offered an alternative plan, but it's all been pretty much brushed aside. I thought Madison was more progressive than this, that it cared about the wishes of its citizens. The Pontiac Trail neighborhood does not support this project, so I urge you to hit the pause button until a more appropriate one can be developed, one that really fits the neighborhood, that will make my neighbors and I feel excited and proud to be living in Madison. Just in case Mario of the Planning Committee, the head engineer on the project, brings up the results of the questionnaire that was done as part of this process. I'd just like to point out that my neighbors and I responded to the questionnaire before we got our assessments, so I'm sure support for this plan has dipped even lower at this point. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Mia Starling of District 10, to be followed by Nelson Holmberg. Do we have Mia? Doesn't look like we have Mia in the room, or possibly not on Zoom either. So we'll go on then to Nelson Holmberg of District 10. Do we have Nelson? Doesn't look like we have Nelson in the room. Or on Zoom. All right, so are there any questions for the registrants on item 7? Seeing none, we'll go on then to item 9. Item 9 is creating sections of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 501 North Whitney Way from NMX to TSS in District 11. We have one registrant wishing to speak, Kelly Carranza of District 11. Do we have Kelly?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, yes. So, good evening, Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I currently am a resident at 501 North Whitney Way, which is also the property known as Whitney on the Hill. I registered to oppose the rezoning. As for my best understanding would be that the rezoning of this property would allow for a push in a redevelopment project for a new 42-unit building. I just wanted to voice my opposition for this redevelopment, as there's a lot of holes that I feel as a current resident doesn't give a clear direction about what is to come in the coming future. So out of the documents that were provided on the agenda and available for public revision, I was not able to find any clear information about rent prices or rent price points, which I would assume would be at market rate or even higher. As a current resident, I feel like the current rate that I pay to live on this property is what I would say is a better and accessible than in comparison to the rest of the what the city might offer, as there's a lot of competition in the area. I also don't think that there is enough community input for this project. As somebody who is new to the community and moved in September to this specific building, it is kind of a little, for lack of better words, I guess I would say a little bit blindsiding to hear about this. And then there's neighbors or other residents that live within these units that have been living here for years, and families who will have to eventually relocate and find new housing, which, as we all know, in Madison can be really competitive given the situation we're in. And then I would also say that the proposal states that the construction would start in spring of 2026, which is a very optimistic date, given that it is currently December and there are holidays to come, which I assume there will be breaks for workers and things to consider, but also things to consider for residents who would have to move out in the process of this redevelopment and would have to re-navigate and relocate.
About 30 seconds left.
Thank you. So overall, I would just say that this project almost puts not only the community who lives here at a risk of facing the housing crisis in Madison, but also at risk of not really having a promised place to relocate to. So I just urge the projects to be put on pause and be discussed further with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no other registrants wishing to speak on item 9. Are there questions for any of the registrants on item 9? Seeing none. And we'll move on to item 11, which is a substitute amending sections of Chapter 28 of the Madison General Ordinances related to housing and auto-oriented uses in the Transit-Oriented Development Overlay District. On item 11, we have several registrants wishing to speak. The first is Nicholas B. Davies of District 15, to be followed by Benjamin Nofke, to be followed by Ed Niles. Do we have Nicholas?
Yes, hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I think the most impactful piece of this will be restricting auto-oriented uses along the TOD corridors. To have a really successful system, every BRT stop you get off at should have amenities that make it a destination for riders from other stops. I don't think even Hill Farms should be exempt from that, whereas auto-oriented uses like parking lots, car washes, and so on tend to create dead zones where it matters most. From the recent multi-lane drive-throughs that have been approved, the previous criteria aren't working as intended. So requiring more stories above a drive-through, for example, will really promote a healthy mix of uses to go along with that drive-through. One thing I haven't heard mentioned yet is snow clearing. Auto-oriented businesses, on average, tend to do an abysmal job of clearing their sidewalks. And it's no secret why. All their customers arrive by car, which gives them a faulty impression that everyone drives and nobody walks. And so they tend to clear their driveway, their parking lot, and leave the sidewalk for last. But at times like this, an uncleared sidewalk, or even a sidewalk cleared after ice pack is formed, can present a real barrier to transit access, especially for people with visual or movement disabilities, or those at greater risk of a fall. I also appreciate that this item allows for 3 and 4 unit housing in areas well served by transit. When TOD originally allowed for duplexes, it was pretty clear to me and probably to many of you that we were not going to see a ton of parcels with houses torn down to rebuild as duplexes because it just isn't worth the expense. Likewise, I don't expect a lot of 3 or 4 unit options to be common, but I see this as streamlining some dense through options in cases of fire or other disaster or structures that have reached their lifespan and become exorbitant to maintain. Homeowners especially deserve this option in areas where multi-unit housing has been historically suppressed by undemocratic fiefdoms. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Benjamin Nofke of District 11, to be followed by Ed Niles, to be followed by Bill Walschlager. Do we have Benjamin?
Hello. So I support the changes to the transit-oriented development overlay. It's good to see the city iterating on policy. I think we should be comfortable with that. And as far as the auto-oriented uses, I do think it's important to be intentional about maximizing the use of that land and continuing to develop ridership and give people a reason to walk off that stop. On the housing side, I'm really excited to see additional types of density and just, opening options for it. Like, that's the important thing here. But I do want to speak on my opposition of the amendment around the Hill Farms Historic District. And earlier this year, Alder Tischler had a book club talking about the 15-minute city and highlighting that Hill Farms is a part of the 15-minute city. And so reflecting on the amendment, it just doesn't really sit right with me that we would acknowledge the livability of this location, but then intentionally keep a barrier for adding more types of housing for this and letting more people enjoy these amenities. And so I do believe that there are good intentions behind the amendment. I read the discourse at the various commissions, but I do care more about outcomes, and I think we already know what the outcome is. When we add additional barriers for housing, we're going to get less of it, and then we're going to have to shoulder the burden elsewhere in the city. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next registrant wishing to speak on item 11 is Ed Niles of District 6, to be followed by Bill Walschlager. Do we have Ed?
Hi. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to speak a little bit tonight. Always hard to follow Ben. Usually I would avoid taking time during this meeting and limit myself to written comments, but tonight I've got a larger point to make and I wanted to ensure it's heard and noticed by the alders and staff. Anybody who knows me is aware I'm exuberantly pro-housing, and I want to thank the city and this council for their continued efforts to pass the Housing Forward initiatives, including the items that are up tonight for winter 2025 proposals. This really greatly improves our housing and development policy in Madison. So I want to start by expressing strong support for adding cottage court developments to Madison's housing vernacular. I know that's not this item, but I enthusiastically support the amendments from Planning Council to allow duplex units and reduce the rear setback for cottage courts. I also want to I think allowing 4-unit buildings by right within the TOD is a wonderful incremental change and very forward-looking policy. I also want to take time to thank the staff and the alders, particularly Alders Figueroa Cole, Ochowitz, and Davey Meyer, who saw that a restriction on car rental services within the TOD was at cross purposes with encouraging car-free and car-light living in Madison. And I really appreciate their work to amend the TOD updates to remove this restriction. However, I want to take just a moment to express my strong opposition to the remaining restrictions on land use around drive-throughs, car washes, auto sales, surface parking, and such in the TOD. I don't actually expect my comments tonight to sway the council to remove these restrictions, and I'm really, really sympathetic to the aims of these proposals in eliminating auto-centered uses. However, I think that it's the height of hubris to assume that we can guess how the TOD might expand or land use patterns might change in Madison over 20, 30, even 50 years, or guess how well-meaning restrictions like these that get built into policies might be weaponized in the future. City staff and this council have spent untold hours wrestling with how to undo zoning and design restrictions from decades earlier that were well-meaning when passed. Well, at least the ones that weren't racially motivated, but have left a chokehold on Madison's ability to expand to meet its citizens' needs. And I really hope you'll heed this warning and, at least going forward, work towards writing policies that avoid writing these restrictions and limitations in, no matter how well-intentioned, and stick to expanding the flexibility of land use. And I think a streak of libertarian caution in this area would make for better policy writing, and a better Madison down the road. So I hope you'll keep the focus on adding, not restricting, flexibility in mind going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last registrant wishing to speak is Bill Walschlager of Packers Avenue. Do we have Bill?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Bill Walschlager. I'm the president of Midwestern Wheels. We are a family-owned car rental business that owns and operates the Avis, and Budget car rental franchises in Wisconsin. We have been operating since 1958 and have been in Madison since the early 70s. We have 3 locations in Madison that are located in District 6, 12, and 18. We are not opposed to the TOD amendment as a whole, and we appreciate the substitute amendment that removes auto rental as a prohibited use within the TOD overlay district. However, we do take issue with 2 aspects of the amendment that I'd like to bring to your attention. First, the proposed definition of auto rental does not accurately define the concept of auto rental as it's recognized in our industry. There are technical difficulties between automobile rental and automobile leasing that this definition that's proposed overlooks. For example, defining an auto rental as 30 days or less is not consistent with existing business practices for Avis or other car rental businesses. That's just one example. Secondly, the amendment does not allow automobile rental businesses, such as my own, to sell our vehicles that were previously in the rental fleet. Selling used vehicles after they have finished their useful life as rentals is a vital part of our business. Additionally, it provides a benefit to the public, allowing them to purchase well-maintained used vehicles at reasonable prices. Unfortunately, the amendment with the proposed definition of auto rental does not allow auto rental businesses within the TOD overlay district to sell their used vehicles. So my ask is that for these reasons, I ask that the council not pass the amendment in its current form, or alternatively, we urge the council to exclude the proposed definition of auto rental from the amendment so that the interested parties can work on a definition that reflects industry standards and our business practices. So I'm open for questions. I thank you for listening, and that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the registrants wishing to speak on this item. Are there questions for any of the registrants? Seeing none. And we'll move on to item 16, which is a substitute amending sections within chapters 16 and 28 of the Madison General Ordinances to create cottage courts. Our first registrant on item 16 is Nicholas Davies of District 15, to be followed by James Worker, to be followed by Benjamin Nofke. Do we have Nicholas?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to speak briefly in favor of this one as well. This will enable, a lot more variations of co-housing, whether you're comfortable sharing a communal kitchen and dining space, but not sharing your bathroom, whether you're more comfortable sharing a car than a kitchen, or whether, you might want to live in cooperative housing, but not share air ducts for various reasons, like limiting disease transmission, controlling allergies, or limiting the impacts of, a neighbor smoking. The process so far has improved this item, correcting the setbacks to orient the cottage court towards its central courtyard, and allowing the cottage court to include duplex or twin type housing units. And I see this as a great option for some and a way to expand housing ownership opportunities, whether via a lot division, condo purchases, or via kind of group ownership situations. So I look forward to this passing tonight. And thank you.
Thank you. Our next registrant on item 16 is James Worker of Southtown Drive, representing Viridian Homes, to be followed by Benjamin Nofke. Do we have James?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Very good. Good evening. Thank you, guys. My name is James Worker. I'm the in-house architect with Viridian Homes. And once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak and offer support for the proposed cottage housing typology. And I'd first like to begin by acknowledging that no single zoning change or housing type will on its own solve the housing shortage or the affordability challenges that we face. But it's truly the combined effect of many small, thoughtful adjustments that can start to move that needle. Since the draft of the ordinance was first released, our team has spent the past several weeks evaluating how the cottage court could fit within our business model, both from land planning perspective, but also like through the architectural solutions of a home plan itself, and how it could support our internal initiatives to expand attainable housing options within the Madison area. And I'm truly excited about the potential of the model. It's community-oriented, modest in scale, aligns well with the missing middle that we hear so much about. But through our feasibility testing, we've identified a few areas of concern that, frankly, would currently prevent us from delivering the cottage courts to market. First, as noted, the full rear yard setbacks as originally proposed is contradictory to the courtyard typology itself. And thankfully, this has been revised in the version before council tonight. But it also currently includes the complete prohibition on attached garages, which unfortunately creates a real market feasibility challenge for us. And it's a reality that many home buyers and residents expect access to a garage. Furthermore, while it does provide a provision for detached shared garages, this shifts the development away from that fee simple ownership model and kind of transcends it into a condo situation, which just adds another layer of complexity and becomes less appealing for us as Viridian, but also to our home buyers. And it's our perspective that alley served parcels or a shared drive, a modest single single-stall garage could be integrated without compromising the development's intent of maintain a pedestrian-focused development. But we also highlighted that.
I'm sorry, you have about 20 seconds left.
Yeah, fair enough. We fully support the city's direction, but respectively request that action on this be deferred for further substitution and refinement. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registrant wishing to speak on this item is Benjamin Nofke of District 11.
Hi again. I like cottage courts. I support them. I'm happy to see the amendments that we have put forth. And, not to be too picky, but I would also like to see more flexibility, but iteration is good. So, different building configurations. I'm excited to see that. And I'm happy to see that people have been heard about feasibility around setbacks. So I support the amendments. I support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for any of the registrants on item 16? Seeing none. Then I believe that is it for, Alder Harrington McKinney, questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like for James Walker.
Worker,
Is
yeah.
he still in the room? Yep. Is he still in the room?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. James, you, in your statement, you said further subdivision and definement. And so what did you mean by definement? I'd like for you to just briefly tell me that I was not able to connect with that statement you made. Could you help me out, please?
Yeah, it's really regarding the underdefined nature of the courtyard and how, as currently written, it would permit a front yard to be considered that communal green space. And the reality is that that's not fully in line with what the housing typology of a shared internal green gem of a cottage court typology in its traditional sense. So I was simply trying to propose that the courtyard as written within the ordinance be mandated to be within the building buildable envelope, not within a setback yard.
Okay. Thank you very, very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions on that item? All right. Seeing none, then that brings us to the end of public comment. And we will move on to, is there any objection to taking up item 59 for the staff presentation? Seeing no objection, then we'll take up item 59, which is Legistar 89942, adopting the updated ADA transition plan. And I believe we have a presentation from staff on this item.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Hoyt. My pronouns are she, hers. I am the Disability Rights and Services Program Specialist for the Department of Civil Rights and the designated ADA Coordinator for the City of Madison. And to model accessibility, I'll share a brief visual description. I am a fair-skinned person with brown and silver curly hair. I have green eyes. I wear glasses with tinted lenses, and I am wearing a gray sweater. This evening, I am excited to share with you a brief summary of Madison's proposed ADA transition plan. To share a little bit about ADA transition plans as a whole, I've included 3 images on this slide to show the transition of a post-ADA world to the one that is envisioned after ADA transition plans. The first image is an archival photo of the Capitol Crawl, which is a protest that took place in March of 1990, where hundreds of people with disabilities abandoned their mobility devices and literally climbed up the steps of the US Capitol to show the inaccessibility of the built world, and in particular, government. When the demonstrators reached the lobby or the tundra, there was an attempt to arrest and remove protesters. However, there was only one accessible elevator in the building, and so it took hours to do so. This protest is often credited for the movement and legislation to the second image, which is President George H.W. Bush signing the Americans with Disabilities Act into law in June of 1990. And the third image are symbols of accessibility, including wheelchair access, interpreters, neurodivergent, and white cane users. And ADA transition plans were required for public entities to be developed within 3 years of the signing of the ADA. And the idea is that the world would not automatically become accessible after the signing of the law, but that public entities would need to create a plan in order to bring the built world from a non-compliant space to a fully compliant environment. And a little bit of background about Madison. Madison did enact an ADA transition plan in the 1990s, and it has maintained compliance, although some elements of that compliance have become decentralized over time. And Madison has grown and changed significantly since the 90s, and so has the disability community, as well as the accessibility standards. As a result, our ADA transition plan needs to be updated in order to ensure legal compliance and accessibility and usability of programs and facilities. Updating our ADA transition plan will also help Madison to join the 13% of local municipalities that have active ADA transition plans. The ADA applies to accessibility and usability of programs, services, and activities, which is part 1 of the plan. And this includes the how we do our work. It also applies to public facilities, which are included in part 2 of the plan. And this is where we do our work. The public right-of-way, which includes pedestrian spaces and facilities owned by the city. And our part 4 of the plan is employment. So our employment practices relating to people with disabilities. So on the next few slides, I'll share a very brief summary of these 4 parts of the plan. So for programs, services, and activities, we completed a self-evaluation of all of our agencies, programs throughout the city to determine where we were meeting compliance standards and where we still had opportunities for growth. So some of the key findings of our self-evaluation were that not all agencies have the equipment and training needed to provide over the phone and video remote interpretation services for people who use languages other than English or who use sign language. We also noted that not all agencies have a process and notices letting people know that they can access and request reasonable accommodations and language access services. We also found that training regarding the rights and responsibilities of people who use service animals was inconsistent across agencies, and that not all agencies had a practice of only using qualified interpreters, except during emergencies or when an individual requests otherwise. We also found some areas for improvement in our compliance practices related to effective communication, specifically ensuring that captioning, braille, note takers, readers, and appropriate use of non-qualified interpreters were provided. There's a full report of program evaluations included in Appendix 4 of the plan. The plan also outlines that we will provide the training and policy development needed for compliance by the end of this year. That training and policy development has already been underway. We've also instructed agencies to obtain the tools and training needed for providing effective communication services by end of this year. And in terms of our public-facing websites, electronic information and technology, we are currently on track to meet the deadline for WCAG 2.2 AA implementation, which is in April of next year. For our public facilities, we conducted an evaluation of all of the facilities that are under the jurisdiction of the city. And these in-person site assessments created a detailed list of access barriers specific to each facility, as well as a schedule for how they would be removed. And this is included in Appendix 6 of the plan. Each identified access barrier was given a priority number that is consistent with the guidance from the National ADA Center. So priority 1 is given to approach and entrance, ensuring that people can get into the building. Priority 2 is given to access to services. So wayfinding signage, use of elevators, and being able to navigate to key spaces. Priority 3 is given to public restrooms, and priority 4 is for additional services such as water fountains, fire alarms, and payphones where they are still available. So the plan identifies that we will have a cost and schedule to remove these access barriers. It includes a budget estimate and schedule for each of the access barriers that has a known remedy. Some of the access barriers need further exploration in order to determine how to make the space accessible or remove the access barrier, and those will be included in a plan addendum by 2040. The reoccurring annual capital improvements budget requests will be used to fund the removal of the access barriers. And I'm sorry, I misstated the date. The plan addendum will be completed by 2030. The capital budget requests will go through 2040. Additionally, we are looking at some training and policy related to improving the accessibility of our facilities. So first is that engineering staff will receive training about how to complete the 2010 ADA Design Standards Facilities Checklist. This is a checklist used by the National ADA Center to evaluate facilities for ADA compliance. I'm happy to report that training has already taken place. And ideally, these checklists will be used for any newly constructed, altered, or acquired facilities so that we are continuing to monitor new facilities or changes to facilities as we go within our current ADA transition plan. Under the plan, the city will also only acquire lease spaces that are compliant with these standards or that can be made compliant in a manner that's readily achievable, which means with minimal cost or effort. The third part of the plan is the public right-of-way. For this portion of the plan, we worked with Access to Independence, which is our local independent living center and a disability-led organization. We also use data sets from the Greater Madison NPO to review and inventory pedestrian facilities, including crosswalks, crosswalk signals, rectangular rapid flash beacons, curb cuts, driveway aprons in the pedestrian network, sites with stairs, sidewalks, pedestrian shared use paths, and bus stops and bus rapid transit stations. The public right-of-way removal of access barriers will have several components. Bus stop accessibility improvements, which were scheduled to be completed November 2025. And those bus stops are included in Appendix 9. We also have some really great existing programs for ongoing system improvements that address traffic signals and safety improvements in the sidewalk system. And a description of those programs is included in Appendix 12. We additionally have an ongoing sidewalk network and repair and replacement program, as well as a curb cut repair and replacement programs that cycle through the city at 2 Alder districts per year on a 10-year cycle. Through our self-evaluation, we did identify 206 sites within the pedestrian network where there is not currently a curb ramp or curb cut. Generally, when there is an absence of a curb ramp or curb cut, it is because there's a mitigating factor within that site, such as a steep slope or grade or some terrain issue that prevents the installation. And so what we will do is begin the process of analyzing each of those sites to determine the feasibility of installing a curb cut or curb ramp. And that will be completed by December 2027. And then an analysis of which program can be used to install feasible curb ramps or curb cuts will be included in a planned addendum by December 2035. The fourth component of the plan is related to employment. So we conducted a policy review as well as obtained information from key staff. And I am happy to report that based on our self-evaluation, the City of Madison is compliant with the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Still, we continue to strive to be a model employer for qualified people with disabilities. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and we hope to have your support in moving the plan forward.
Thank you. Are there questions for staff on this item? Alder Okovitz.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Rebecca. I was looking at specifically the public right-of-way in the sidewalk section, and it talks about repairing and replacing sidewalks, but I don't see anything about closing the network explicitly as part of that. Is that included somewhere in there, and am I missing it, or?
The intent is to make the pedestrian network accessible and usable for people with disabilities, not to close or limit it.
Oh, sorry. By close, I mean identifying areas that don't have sidewalks that are like gaps in the network and closing those gaps by including sidewalks. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much for the clarification. They're installing the 206 curb cuts or curb ramps would complete the network. And there is a couple of interactive maps included in the plan that identify those points where we've found a lack of a curb cut or curb ramp. And so that would be in the sidewalk accessibility map in Appendix 10 and the sidewalk system map in Appendix 11.
Okay. I guess to be more specific for Appendix 11, is there anything specifically in the plan about when we do street reconstructions to include sidewalks as part of filling in the network gaps?
Yes. So under the new standards that have not yet been adopted by DOJ, but we consider to be best practice, the PROAG standards, any new construction must be fully compliant with existing standards. So the ADA transition plan looks at removing access barriers in existing facilities and commits to those compliance standards for new facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. I see that our Director of Traffic Engineering, Yang Tao, is also here and may want to answer that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I want to thank her, thank the author for the question. I just want to add to Rebecca's answer on closing the pedestrian gaps in the network. So traffic engineering is leading a project updating the city's pedestrian plan, which is much needed, and it's a component of that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. President Vitiver, questions?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. So you foretold my question about budget by including it in there, because as you were presenting, I was thinking, okay, now we got to pay for this stuff. But what I'm wondering about is the 15-year timeline. Isn't that too long to be able to get everything accessible?
I think you raised 2 points that are often where the tension is, so cost and time. Of course, if we had all of the resources available, we could do it much more quickly. The reason why dates are projected out is based on available resources, specifically budget, in order to fund the removal of the access barriers. My hope is that as we continue to create checklists for new facilities and that we are installing things accessible the first time, that the overall cost in the long term will decrease because we have built it compliant the first time.
I guess then just to follow up, is there any potential for prioritizing these changes such that they would occur quicker on the existing facilities?
I don't want to speak to other resources besides funds that might be needed from engineering. I know we do have some engineering staff on the call, but we did work closely with engineering around removal of access barriers. And so cost and resources in terms of people is considered in the timelines.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you. And in addition to the question from Alder Vitiver in regards to prioritization and what is can you provide some feedback on regards specifically to the discussions around clearing the sidewalks during snow services removal services?
Yes, thank you for the comment. In addition to the compliance recommendations, we also incorporated feedback from our residents from the 2023 Disability Summit. And so in terms of public right-of-way, there were 2 main issues that residents wanted us to prioritize in terms of creating more accessibility. And those were removal of snow and accessibility of the pedestrian right-of-way during construction. And so those are issues that we will continue to collaborate with other agencies in order to develop more effective solutions and policies that promote accessibility.
So are those discussions already happening, or is that something that you guys will be taking action at some point?
Those discussions are already happening. The ones that require changes to standard specifications will be in line with the existing timelines for those updates, which I believe are typically January, February. So that will be the revision period for those policies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Knox.
I think my question is for Mr. Tao. Is he still available?
He's still here, yes.
Yeah, I guess my question is piggyback on what Alder Vitiver was getting to about prioritizing. So if, for example, you get a citizen's call about a sidewalk that's challenging, either not having a curb cut, maybe it's part of that 206, or just uneven sidewalks, do you guys prioritize based on service calls that may have these gaps?
That's a great question, Alder Knox. So right now, we work very closely with our colleagues in the engineering division. So when we got these requests, we're looking to the importance of the gap in the network, how many people are using it, and also the difficulty and the cost of installing those. As Rebecca mentioned, many of those gaps or not AD compliant sections right now, have great reasons behind those. So oftentimes that we have to consider again, the potential benefits and the potential cost, and we make a decision together. So other factors involved also, whether these areas could be on construction in the next few years or not. So that based on a number of factors. However, though, with the city's pedestrian plan update, staff are working on right now. We're trying to look at the whole city systematically, identify the key gaps in the pedestrian network. And we do want to recommend some of recommendation factors to consider. For example, whether it's near a school, a library, community center, parks, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, I would add that for repair and replacement programs, which would be separate from new installation, there is priority given to members of the public who report a concern related to a sidewalk in their neighborhood.
Thank you. Alder Pritchett.
Yes, this is for Dr. Tao. I had communicated with you several weeks ago regarding the Old Sauk Road area. And as you know, that area has residents who use wheelchairs, walkers, etc. And I looked at a report that engineering put out a couple of weeks ago. And in that report, it pretty much outlined or detailed areas that that people had questioned. And then apparently there was an assessment done. But then many of those areas were not deemed appropriate, to have those issues fixed. So what are the determining factors? Somewhere along the line, I got lost. Where am I? Oh, gosh. Can you hear me?
We can.
Well, I'll continue because I have no idea why I lost this. At any rate, there were concerns about, crossing the street, and especially using a walker, wheelchair, and the lighting or the traffic signals was such that you wouldn't have time to get across. And constituents are asking for a curb cut, to get from one point to another point. So my question then is, if your report states that that particular area is not deserving of, like a change in a curb cut or whatever, what do they have to do? Does a person have to be maimed or killed before action is taken? Simply stated.
So thank you for that question, Alder. So first, I haven't seen that report, so I'm not sure whether it's from my staff in traffic engineering, or maybe sounds like that might be from staff from the engineering division. But I'll follow up. I'll check on that. However, though, I do know that after receiving your communication, we're looking to do a couple of things on Old Sauk Road near Attica Anju. So one is retiming the signal at the signalized existing locations, so that we can provide pedestrians, as you mentioned, many are seniors living nearby, cross street going to the strip mall. So we're changing the timing so we can give pedestrians a little bit longer time, so the seniors can have more time to cross the street. So that's the first thing we're doing. The second thing we're doing is that we're trying to look at the, between those signalized locations, trying to see whether it's a logical location and a safe location for us to, as you requested, create a kind of mid-block crosswalk. So pedestrians don't have to, walk along Osaka Road and then cross the street at signal, and then it goes way back to their destination. However, though, we'll try to do what we can. However, though, that may not always be possible due to a number of potential reasons. Such as on that street, it's a high-speed, high-volume street. We want to make sure whatever we come up with, we feel that's safe. Sometimes we can make further improvements, such as building, flashing beacons, the RFBs, to help pedestrians, to alert the drivers. But sometimes that cannot be done if it's too close to a traffic signal. It creates confusion, for the travelers, and it could cause more problems than solving problems. Other potential issues such as grid issues, whether for example the curb cuts we can create, whether that meets the standards. So there are a number of factors behind that. I haven't received the kind of the final answer from my staff working on those. So I'm not sure exactly the report you're referring to what they talk about, and from which city department. But I'll definitely check on those and follow up with you. Go ahead.
Can I suggest, Alder, that we defer discussion of specific projects to a conversation between you and staff? The item before us is the transition plan, not specific projects. So if you have questions about the process or the transition plan.
I'll communicate with traffic engineering.
Thank you, Alder.
Thank you.
Are there other questions on the transition plan? Seeing none, then President Vitiver, motion please on item 59. Moved and seconded to adopt item 59. Is there discussion on item 59? President Vitiver? No. Then is there any discussion on item 59? Seeing none, item 59 has been moved and seconded. Alder Harrington McKinney?
Madam Mayor, I would just like to commend the presentation. I mean, I have sat in spaces where Rita Holt was presenting, and she takes this very, very seriously, and she challenges where there needs to be a challenge. And so I would not like, of course I'm supporting this, but I would not like to not acknowledge the work and the commitment that she has for the ADA assessment program. And so I just want to make sure that the record reflects that she takes this serious. This is more than a job for her. This is a life working experience, and she takes it very serious. And so I want to say, Rebecca, hands off to you and the work that you do and the sight that you see for things that we don't see. And I just didn't want this to pass by without saying that. I'm complete.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Knox?
Yeah, this is not on this item. Are we finished with this item?
Not yet, Alder. I'll come right back to you.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion on item 59? Seeing none, it has been moved and seconded, and with the council's indulgence, I also would just like to thank Rebecca for the incredible amount of work that she did on this project. And she was really the motivating force here. But there are also a number of staff from every agency in the city that did these audits, including literally going through all of our facilities and measuring doorways and handles, like door handle heights, and really just making sure that we were considering everything. But none of that would have been able to happen without Rebecca's leadership. So thank you, Rebecca, for the incredible work that you've done on this item.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 59. Now, Alder Knox.
Yes, I'd like to make a point of personal privilege, and I earlier did a recusal. I'd actually make that a disclosure instead, for the record.
Thank you, Alder Knox.
Thank you.
Alder Mayor.
And I apologize, I believe I was in the hallway when you did disclosures, so I disclosed on the UW items.
Thank you, Alder. Right, so we are then back to item 7, which is Legistar 90845, approving plan specifications and a schedule of assessments for Pontiac Trail, Boston Court, Rosewood Circle, and Nokomis Circle Assessment District 2025 in District 10. On item 7, President Vitiver, a motion, please.
Move to adopt.
Moved and seconded to adopt item 7. On item 7, are there questions for staff? Seeing no questions, Alder Figueroa Cole.
I don't know if staff had a presentation on this item or not.
Do we have a presentation from engineering or traffic engineering on this item? Not sure. Yep. Engineer Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just raising my hand to say we do not have a presentation prepared at this time.
Thank you. Alder, did you have specific questions?
I'll reserve them for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, then item 7 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Alder Figueroa Cole.
I just again want to, this item has been going through the system for a while now. And I want to thank staff and all the committees that have reviewed the topic at hand, as well as all the people in the neighborhood that has reached out either in support or against the project. Once again, I said this the last time we had a reconstruction project on the floor. We as a body approved a complete green streets policy that is strongly believe is a very solid policy that creates that focuses on equity and ensures that people have accessibility, just like Rebecca was discussing a minute ago. So I'm in support of this project, and I get it. I understand that people are not happy with it. I also want to clarify that, make the clarification that we also, in addition to the complete green street policy, we change our policy for sidewalk assessments. So in instances like this, there's no sidewalk assessments. So the assessments that the people receive were based on the construction on the site, and the Board of Public Works actually authorized to increase the assessment payment period to 15 years. So that was intended with the hopes that would alleviate the cost of those assessments. So again, thank you to staff and to everyone that participated on this process, including the neighborhood. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Is there any further discussion on item 7? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of item 7? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote and move. Oh, Alder Knox, did you wish to be recognized?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to vote no on this item.
Thank you, Alder. We'll record you as voting no. All right, seeing nothing else, then we'll record ayes except for Alder Knox and move on to item 9, which is Legistar 90539, creating sections of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property locating at 501 North Whitney Way from neighborhood mixed use to traditional shopping street in District 11. On item 9, President Vitiver.
Move to adopt.
Moved and seconded to adopt item 9. On item 9, are there questions for staff? Seeing none. On item 9, is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion on item 9, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 9. And that will take us to item 11, which is Legistar 90552, a substitute amending sections of Chapter 28 of the Madison General Ordinances related to housing and auto-oriented uses in the Transit-Oriented Development Overlay District. On item 11, President Vitiver, motion, please.
Move to adopt the substitute.
Moved and seconded to adopt the substitute. On item 11, are there questions for staff? Alder Evers.
Thank you, Mayor. Would this go to Planning Director Tuttle, perhaps? Mr. Walschlager raised the concern as someone who has a rental car business that he would not be able to sell cars once they've kind of gone beyond the natural course of use of being able to be rented. And I know most businesses like Hertz and other rental car companies are accustomed to being able to sell their inventory to have relatively new cars to be able to rent to the public. Is there any possibility in your mind that we could amend this to somehow or another create an exception that rental car businesses, not as a selling new inventory, but somehow or another to auction firms or some appropriate way of being able to dispose of their inventory, that this would be allowed?
Thank you, Alder. I'll note that Zoning Administrator Katie Bannon is online, and I know Katie has worked with this topic in pretty great detail based on some earlier inquiries, so I'll let her start and I'll add if there's anything I can contribute.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Megan. Yes, rental car businesses will still be able to sell their vehicles to someone who can sell to consumers. That's how many rental companies operate today. I did take a look at the state requires a license to be able to sell any vehicles. And there are a couple locations within the state that I could find where they do rental and auto sales at the same location. But most rental businesses are going to sell them to a place that will do auto sales rather than selling them on the same site that they do auto sales. Did that answer your question? Oh, well, I guess the other piece was, is there a way to kind of create some kind of carve out that an auto rental business could do auto sales? I think that would be really difficult to do. It's not something that, we're able to check. How did you get these vehicles? How many vehicles a year are you selling? Looking at receipts. There's a pretty clear distinction in Wisconsin state statute between what's required if you're doing auto sales to consumers versus auto rental business. We have to sign off on any auto sales that happen before they can get their state license to do auto sales. So I do think it would be really difficult to distinguish between a business that does auto rental with auto sales from a place that does exclusively auto sales, and would probably undermine the entire ordinance as far as not allowing auto sales. If you do auto rental, you can also do auto sales.
Well, thank you. And it sounds like what you're suggesting is that there are means through some kind of auction firm or something like that that specializes in purchasing these vehicles from auto rental companies and then selling them. And I assume then that this individual could perhaps be guided to go in that direction, and it would not necessarily impact his business in a negative way. So thank you for answering that question. I feel like I understand it better, and I'm content that this is the right thing and we should move forward and pass this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Uguer, questions?
Thank you, Mayor. This would, I believe, also be a question for Director Tuttle. Mr. Walschlager also added concern about the definition that we have. Just looking at the definition for a rental place, where that's the primary business, the definition is for rentals of 30 days or less. So after hearing that comment from the registrant, I did a quick search and looked at Enterprise, Budget, Avis, and Hertz, and noted that they all do say that our typical plan is up to 30 days, but then they say, talk to us about our special plans for, in one case, 60 days, in another case, up to 6 months, or something like that. So I guess the question would be, would we typically interpret the language in the proposed substitute as being typical, albeit there could be other terms that might be available, if not typical, or do we need to work on that definition a little?
Yeah, thank you. I'll once again defer this question to Katie Bannon, because I know this is also an area of research that she did for this ordinance.
Yeah, so we worked together with the city attorney's office, and when we looked at the 30 days, we really looked to align to how the state considers auto rental. They have a provision of 30 days, and so the definition really is intended to be consistent with how the state looks at an auto rental use. I suspect that's what's happening after the 30 days, is you're probably ending your rental and starting a new rental period to be able to continue on.
Okay, so I'm taking what you're saying to say that we're aligned with a typical state definition, and that doesn't seem to interfere with the ability of major rental companies to, as a special side operation, to be able to rent for longer terms in certain cases.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Okovitz?
I think my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Harrington McKinney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The question, I guess, is for Katie, and I read MGO 28, and I'm still, and I guess I'm not as sharp as some of my colleagues. What are we trying to fix? I just need to see the intent, and I'm not able to connect the intent with the substitute. What are we trying to fix? Can you answer that for me or help me to get past that?
Yeah, I think so. And Director Tuttle, feel free to jump in if I'm missing something. So with prohibiting certain uses within the transit-oriented development overlay district, the intent was there are certain really truly auto-oriented uses that would be better located in areas outside of our high frequency transit areas, where we're really trying to concentrate transit-oriented uses, where you're a pedestrian or transit rider, and this is something that you're going to access, whether housing or jobs or some other kind of services. And so the initial proposal was to prohibit 4 different uses as principal uses: car washes, auto sales, auto rental, and standalone parking lots. So this is a parking facility that's not for a restaurant or a business, apartment, something else. It would just be truly a private parking facility that's only used for parking. The substitute is to remove auto rental and continue to allow auto rental as an allowed use within the transit-oriented development overlay district, and still prohibit those 3 remaining uses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole, questions?
Actually, not a question. Just want to add clarity to that question, but I'll wait.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions for staff on item 11? Seeing none, then is there discussion? Alder Figueroa Cole?
Just wanted to add to that explanation that the intent of excluding the rental is to allow for people that don't own a car and that occasionally needs a car to get to places. So it's not like going to the dealership and because your car is on repairs and they rent you a car to replace it, or it's not a lease that is a long-term, another car long-term on the roads all the time. It's just to allow for people that don't have cars to have access, to be able to get on the BRT or Metro and then drop off at a car rental, and then you rent a car for a limited period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate this substitute, which took care of the only concern I had with this ordinance. As someone who talks frequently about having never owned a car in Madison, car rental is something that helps support that lifestyle, being not frequent, but a regular user of the Avis on East Washington in my district. I'm very glad to see this substitute carves that out. So I do definitely support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Knox?
Yeah, I'm certainly feel positive about the housing options that's being offered here. However, I tend to oppose blanket restrictions on certain businesses. I feel like even how people who live in houses need to have access to these businesses to purchase a car, and they might actually have a job that has a surface parking lot. So I kind of gravitated to what one of our public speakers, Ed Dowse, commented on, that maybe if we keep restricting things, then in the future, then we're going to have to undo those zoning issues because things change, neighborhoods change, and I'm one of those people who feel like restrictions limit options as opposed to offering other options. So I'm going to not vote for this particular thing because I just think it's very anti-business.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Tischler.
Yeah, this is a question for Katie. I just wanted a clarifying question.
Alder, we're past questions and into discussion.
Oh, okay. Okay, then I will just be quiet then.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Okovitz.
Thank you, Mayor. A while ago, I had asked Isaac to put together a memorandum on different areas that had tried various types of missing middle housing zoning reforms and what the results have been. And one of the most notable ones that he had the most information on was Portland, Oregon, which updated their zoning code in 2021 to allow more housing types, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and including cottage courts, which is a separate item we'll take up tonight. They found that it was pretty successful in both promoting missing middle housing types and increasing the overall production of housing. In addition, I think one of the most important things to note from this report is that the average sale price of a lot of these missing middle housing types was $600,000, which sounds like a lot, but the average market rate house was selling for $900,000. So it's 33% less or $300,000 less for the missing middle housing types, which is a pretty significant difference for a lot of people who are looking to buy houses. In addition, I think expanding these housing options throughout a lot of areas that have historically just been single-family detached homes is really important to me from an equity perspective, because I don't think that you should need to several $100,000s to buy a house in order to live in a neighborhood. I think those neighborhoods should be accessible to all kinds of people, making all kinds of income. And if the only options available are detached single-family houses, it's really difficult for those people to live in those neighborhoods. So it's a big part of the reason why I'm supporting this ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Harrington McKinney?
Okay, thank you. And this is my second time speaking. I am absolutely supportive of the housing aspect of it and the missing middle. I'm just having a difficult time understanding the connection with the auto piece of it. And because I'm not clear on why these two things were linked and excluded one over the other, I'm not going to be supporting. I know it's just one vote, but I'm just not clear about why these two things were even linked in the same category with housing that we know that we definitely have a housing shortage, but with the restrictive business component of it makes me a little bit still uncomfortable and unclear. I am complete.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Uguer.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak to this point that has been raised, and it's a good point that we should think about with regard to those things that we're prohibiting here. But I think we're looking at it from the wrong aspect of what this accomplishes. And I'm speaking to this as Alder of a district that contains a significant portion of the TOD overlay. We're really not talking, or let me say that let's not look at what we're prohibiting in a very specific area, because we're certainly not prohibiting certain kinds of sales and auto-oriented things in large parts of the city. We're doing it in a particular part of the city where we would much rather have land used for multifamily purposes, other forms of housing, in lieu of those kinds of low-density approaches. And we want to build it there so that the people who live there are very close to the public transit that allows them to have a good life, reach employment, reach services without depending on an automobile. So I think it's important for us to make the connection that what we're really talking about is reserving land use in a very specific corridor of this city where we have concentrated transit capabilities to be used for housing as opposed to low-density auto-oriented services. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Tischler.
Just want to see if now is a good time to propose an amendment.
It is.
All right. I'd like to propose an amendment. It's in the it's the Alder Tischler proposed amendment, UHF National Register.
For the benefit of the public, do you want to at least briefly describe it?
Briefly, I can try. Briefly, it's to change within the University Hill Farms National Historic District for units that would be 3 or 4 units to be, rather than by right, to be a conditional use. And that's just within the University Hill Farms National Historic District. That's along a quarter mile along the TOD.
Thank you, Alder. There's a motion. Is there a second? It's moved and seconded. Alder, do you wish to speak further to the amendment?
I do. How much? I have 10 minutes, or?
At the max.
Okay. All right. Let me just. I'll try to be as quick as possible. But I do appreciate that resident earlier on. One of my District 11 residents mentioned the District 11 Book Club, because I use the book clubs as a way to get people thinking critically on issues that affect the city. And yes, I did do a book club discussion on walkable neighborhoods. And the University Hill Farms is a walkable neighborhood. It was designed that way back in 1953. The University Hill Farms National Historic District is one of Madison's most intact and thoughtful planned mid-century neighborhoods. It was built on a 620-acre former agricultural site And it was designed in 1953, or starting in 1953, finished in 55, to address the rapid post-war population growth, the rising student body at the university, as well as the regional housing shortage at that time. Instead of implementing cul-de-sacs that would restrict movement, the design featured curving streets shaped by the natural topography and an intentional mix of residential, civic, commercial, and institutional uses, including public schools, parks, post office, places of worship, business offices, apartments, and a shopping mall. The blend of homes, apartments, commercial spaces, and public buildings made University Hill Farms a self-contained, walkable suburban community. And by 1964, about 87% of all the district buildings were complete. And today, the neighborhood still reflects its original design. And it's a design that the university worked along with city planners to create. Now, although the area was designed around the automobile, every street includes sidewalks, and pedestrian cut-throughs were incorporated to help residents walk through the long streets to get to neighborhood schools, stores, and later city bus stops. Another key feature of the plan was its early embrace of multifamily housing. The district includes 37 duplex-style buildings along Manitowoc Parkway and 11 two-story garden buildings at the corner of Regent Street and North Seago, each with 16 two- and three-bedroom units. Several high-rise apartments were added along Sheboygan Avenue between 1962 and 65, giving University Hill Farms what was likely the highest concentration of purpose-built apartments in Madison at that time. And this pattern of increased housing density continues to this day, as former surface parking lots at the Hilldale Shopping Mall and the State Office Building are now being transformed into new apartment buildings, some 16 stories in height. What was once acres of asphalt that were used for parking cars are now permanent housing for thousands of residents, making this one of the fastest growing areas in Madison outside of the downtown. The amendment that I'm putting forth would adjust the zoning by changing the 3 and 4 unit buildings in the Hill Farms area from by right to conditional use. And this adds a little extra layer of review, similar to what we already require in local Madison historic districts, and addresses some of the concerns that area residents have about protecting the historic designation that they worked very hard to secure and now benefit from through tax credits. They managed to get this area on the National Register for Historic Places back in 10 years ago in 2015. Now, I should add, too, that it's only a national level. It's not a local Madison Historic District. So in 2015, the National Register nomination underscores the kind of integrity of the area over the decades, noting that only 13 buildings are classified right now as non-contributing. And here we are 10 years later after it is designated with a need for housing. And there are actions that area residents can take to create even more density while still valuing historic preservation and recognizing the environmental impact of tearing down existing buildings and filling up areas, filling up landfills. The existing mid-century structures, the housing, can often be converted into duplexes and ADUs can be built. These are ordinances that we've already passed. And ADUs can be built in the backyards. In fact, we can be putting twin ADUs. But adding 4 units on these same parcels of lands would typically require a tear down, thereby increasing the number of non-contributing buildings. Now, significant alterations to buildings may lead to a loss of a designation or a revisiting the district boundaries. Now, in practice, this action is very rare, but nonetheless, the possibility exists, and all University Hill Farm residents, both homeowners and renters alike, should be aware that altering structures too much could jeopardize the district's standing and potentially affects tax credit eligibility for the entire neighborhood. I did not put forth this amendment in bad faith, nor do I want to deny the opportunity for more housing in the district. And I'm stepping a little bit away from the group on this housing initiative to bring attention to how University Hill Farm residents can continue to add more housing while preserving what makes this historic area unique. Homeowners already have the tools at their disposal, and this approach would allow residents, by using the tax credits, and as one resident wrote to me, or actually spoke at the Planning Commission, if I can call it up, because I'm sure I'm at 10 minutes right now. Actually, I can't find it right away. Well, let's see. Sorry about that. Yeah, a resident spoke at the Planning Commission last week that they used the tax credit to help pay for a furnace, a roof, and a garage door. This credit helps retired homeowners stay in their homes and age in place. Now, even if this amendment fails tonight, it has already generated some good discussions with area residents, committees, and city staff. And I'm confident that with additional educational opportunities and town halls, maybe we'll do a book club on this, we'll see even more housing in this historic district, and able to kind of add on and make modifications to existing structures rather than need to tear down existing homes. And that is all I have to say. So thank you for letting me talk so long. Probably a record.
Thank you, Alder. 6 minutes, 25 seconds.
Oh, that's, see, I don't know.
Give or take.
Well, I have 4 more minutes to go then, right? No, I'm just kidding.
On the Tischler amendment, Alder Ugar.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to express my appreciation for the concise way in which Alder Tischler was able to make that presentation, and I certainly appreciate the thought behind it, the intent behind it. Just like to cover a few of the things that we discussed at Plan Commission in regard to that amendment, and why I voted against the amendment. Quite a few of us, including me, were not around when the TOD overlay was approved some years ago, but I did watch the debate at that time. There was extensive discussion about carving out or making special arrangements for the historic district that Alder Tischler has mentioned within the TOD overlay. And at that time, the council decided not to make a special carve-out of any kind for the historic district after listening to all of the aspects of that. That was persuasive in part at our discussion at the Plan Commission when we took this matter up. Staff also noted, if my notes are correct at the time, that it was highly unlikely that any action that would be taken as a result of this within the TOD corridor would result in the loss of tax advantages for the residents in the historic district, even if that were to happen. So I do not believe that it would be necessary to add this additional protection. Staff also, as I recall at the time, mentioned that it did make administration in the TOD overlay more complex to have one area that would be carved out with this kind of requirement when no other area was carved out in the same way. So I will be voting against the amendment, but appreciate the intent behind it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers.
Thank you, Mayor. And to appreciate Alder Tischler's desires here, but I won't be supporting it. To me, I recall the arguments that were made when we passed the TOD initially, and there was a move, I believe that Alder Tischler was spearheading to make exceptions for similar exceptions in opposition to the duplexes, which he now sees or accepts the argument that was made at that time that it'd be possible to do duplexes using the tax credit system that the National Historic Districts provide. I don't know that I agree that it's totally impossible that if someone presented a plan to build a 4-unit, a small apartment building consistent with the neighborhood vernacular, that they be denied federal tax credits. At any rate, as the city grows, it's necessary that we build more housing along our transit routes. And as was, I forget the name of somebody or another, said as the registrant in speaking against this particular amendment, when we impose things like conditional use versus a permitted use, we are creating a barrier that simply makes it more difficult to build housing, much needed housing. So for that reason, I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Vitever.
So I do remember well our TOD discussions, particularly because the historic districts were not originally part of the TOD, and then they were added. And while I personally represent one local historic district and 2 national historic districts, one of which is also in the TOD, and the local historic district is in the TOD, I wasn't worried. And to this day, am not worried because we have a really effective landmarks commission. And as an example, we have, in Alder Everest District, we had a denial of removal of 2 houses in a national historic district, not a local historic district, but a national historic district, because they would impact the vernacular of the area. So first, I have problems with this amendment because it really discounts the very high level of preservation that we take seriously in this city. And secondly, because it's a carve out for one district. Again, I have a local and a national historic district within the TOD, and to say it's okay to do this over here because this particular alder wants it for his district, but not anywhere else, I mean, it's incredibly discriminatory. So I can't support this amendment.
Thank you, Alder Okovitz.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand Alder Tischler's reasoning for introducing this, but for similar reasons, I also will not be supporting this. We've been moving away from making things much more difficult to do. We recently changed ADUs from being a conditional use to being a permitted use, and as Alder Tischler noted, that's, his residents appreciate that. I've talked with people who were individual homeowners who had to go through the conditional use process for their ADU, and they said it was a nightmare and they would never do it again. It's similar for small developers trying to build a 4-unit building is not that big or not that big of a change. And by making it a conditional use, you are effectively killing the whole purpose of the ordinance and in just one specific area. In addition, I also represent an area that has a National Register Historic District in addition to a local Register Historic District, and I've lived in many buildings that have been part of a National Register, have contributed to a National Register Historic District. And I don't, like Alder Vitever mentioned, we have a very strong landmarks commission. I don't think anyone would think that a 4-unit building would negatively impact the vernacular of those areas or be so out of place that the area would no longer would have its National Register status revoked, which, as Alder Tischler mentioned, is an incredibly rare action. It just doesn't make sense to me to carve out one specific area of the city to move backwards on. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Tischler.
Yeah, and what I wanted to add too is that one of the benefits of serving as an alder is I get to learn more about not just the whole city, but my district in particular. So one of the things that I did not realize, and I'd lived in my area for for almost 58 years now, but I didn't realize how many duplexes there actually were that were part of the original design. That is the other thing too is that this I also didn't I learned since we had the discussion a couple of years ago with the TOD about covenants and the deed restrictions and how all those have expired. Almost all of them expired in District 11 because they expire after 60 years, 40 years now for newer ones. So and like I said before, this is I do the book clubs. I'm speaking now just to kind of educate others in my district as well. What District 11 does not have, and University Hill Farms does not have, is it's just a national landmark status. It does not have a local, and so maybe listeners will be hearing that and might see that might be a possible path to follow. Then they would have some of the similar protections or some oversights that our local historic districts have. So I'm done talking.
Thank you, Alder.
Thank you for listening.
All right. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak on the Tischler amendment. Anticipating disagreement on the amendment. All those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Alder Tischler. Aye. Verveer. No. Vitiver. No. Duncan.
No.
No. Evers. No. Field.
No.
No. Figueroa Cole. No. Glenn. No. Govindarajan. No. Ugair? No. Harrington McKinney?
Abstain.
Lankella? No. Knox?
No.
No. Madison?
No.
No. Martinez Rutherford? No. Matthews?
No.
No. Mayor? No. O'Brien? No. Okovich? No. Pritchett?
No.
No, that is 1 aye, 19 noes, and 18 noes and 1 abstain.
With 18 noes, that amendment will fail. We're back to the main motion, which is the substitute. Is there further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, then on item 11, the substitute, is there objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Alder Harrington McKinney?
I would register me as a no.
Alder Tischler?
Also a no.
Alder Knox?
No.
All right, so unless there's anything further, we'll have 3 noes and 17 ayes. Seeing nothing further, then the item will pass with 17 ayes. And that will take us to item 16, which is Legistar 90557, a substitute amending sections within chapters 16 and 28 of the Madison General Ordinances to create cottage courts. On item 16, President Vitiver.
Move to adopt.
Moved and seconded to adopt item 16. On item 16, are there questions for staff? Alder Evers.
Yes, I assume this will go to Director Tuttle. James Worker from Veridian brought forth concerns. How were these addressed by staff or Plan Commission? Perhaps alders on Plan Commission can address and you can share. They seem to be particularly concerns about the placement of garages. And as Veridian is one of our major builders and presumably supports the concept of cottage courts, it seems to me that we should listen and pay attention to them and not create barriers that one of our major construction firms can't seem to get around. So have their concerns been addressed or is there something that I'm missing here?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Alder. I'll speak to a couple of the other points that James raised in his comments and written comments to you briefly, and then get to the garages last. James raised the point about rear setbacks, and I think he noted that the substitute that you have before you made the change as recommended by the BCCs that this item was referred to before it came to you, to reduce that rear setback for cottage courts. So that has been addressed. I did not speak directly with James, but I know that we talked with a member of the Housing Policy Committee who was asking some questions along the lines of some of James' comments about, defining the placement of the courtyard within a cottage court. When we were discussing that issue with the housing policy members, we had indicated that staff's initial proposal for the cottage court standards was intentionally more flexible so as not to put a lot of specific standards for site design and placement of the elements within the cottage court, not to overly prescribe that right out of the gate and allow for some flexible situations for how this could come together. When we were doing some of our own internal kind of feasibility testing, we did explore some examples where the courtyard element of a cottage court could be placed along one of the lot lines within a cottage court, front or side, for example, and did not necessarily see that as a particularly negative aspect of a cottage court development overall. Because of the other rules about placement of cottage court, individual buildings within a cottage court needing to have a door facing the cottage court, we think some aspects of that will require for those courtyards to be larger and not only within the front yard setback, for example. So as far as garages are concerned then, we did talk about this issue also with one of the Housing Policy Committee members, and I think answered some questions about this in the public meeting that we had back at the beginning of November. Ultimately, cottage courts are intended to be a new housing type that can fit alongside other homes and other housing types within existing neighborhoods, and as such are envisioned to be on fairly small lots, fairly small sites. The way that we developed these standards was intentional to not really make them become small subdivisions, for lack of a better word. We have procedures for subdivisions, and we have procedures already in the code for things like a residential building complex that could allow for larger cottage court-esque type developments, including ones that may have internal alleys and access to garages. So this was really intended to be a nimbler, smaller, permitted use type of housing that could be incorporated within existing neighborhoods alongside other housing types. So for that reason, we did not recommend that the individual cottages be allowed to have individual driveways and garages serving them directly, in part because when we think about the level of infrastructure that's needed to accommodate those individual driveways and the circulation within a cluster of up to 8 homes, that could really take up a lot of the room on the lot. And we wanted to avoid a situation where that internal circulation became a sort of internal road or ring road kind of situation. So that's ultimately where we landed, and happy to have you ask the other members of the Plan Commission or others for their perspective as they reviewed this.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Pritchett, questions?
Yes. Quickie question. I know we're concerned about increasing the number of affordable houses, but my question is this: how many existing properties right now meet the definitions or the requirements for building a cottage court dwelling?
That's a great question. I actually don't know that off the top of my head, Alder. But what we gain here is another housing option that could be allowed within neighborhoods across the city. So over the years, we have work to make ADUs more permissible, allow duplexes, even with tonight's ordinance changes allowing for 3 and 4 unit buildings as an additional option in some neighborhoods within the transit-oriented development overlay. So this allows us to consider additional small housing types that could be, in this case, clusters of small homes that share a lot that could help us add additional housing choices within neighborhoods.
But if we're really interested in increasing housing, and if we want to come up with other options, especially looking at cottage court housing, wouldn't it be prudent to have some idea as to what do we gain by doing it? Because on the flip side, if you're gaining in one neighborhood just maybe 2 current properties that are interested in this and the rest of them are not, why bother?
Yeah, it's a great question. And certainly one that comes up when we're talking about the scale of housing type choices that we're talking about. These are often called missing middle. So housing types that range from duplexes up to even small apartment buildings in some cases. We know that when folks are building small housing types like this, there can be unique challenges to actually building and implementing these types of housing that sometimes cause people to ask that question about why bother. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is create a code that allows for a wide range of choices to be permissible within neighborhoods, so that if someone can identify a lot or a property and make the right circumstances come together to actually implement those housing choices, that our neighborhoods can be places where that variety of housing types can be seen and can be realized.
I asked this question primarily because when we think about building, and we know that we have sewer mains and we have, like all kinds of wiring below ground. And now we're going to put a cottage court dwelling on it. That can be very, very disruptive, not only for, let's say, the owner that has this property, but it can also be disruptive for someone's property who is adjacent to it. So I'm also thinking about fires and how, are we going to get, like the trucks and the hoses and the things like that there, especially if we have to get through a narrow alleyway or driveway or whatever. Those are the kinds of things that I think we have to be forward in terms of thinking about, in terms of what are we creating if we do that.
I appreciate those comments, Alder. Ultimately, with all developments of any scale in the city, we bring them through, in this case, they will come through certainly Katie Bannon's team, the zoning administrator's team, to review for compliance with any other applicable codes, and that often requires review by other city agencies. So anything that would impact utilities, like you mentioned, review by fire, make sure that these properties and the way that they are being proposed and ultimately developed are serviceable by all of our public services is part of that review process. We did have some conversations with police, fire, streets to talk about trash pickup and some of the other details. And, certainly developing any housing of any kind can be complicated sometimes when those utilities are involved. But we did hear from them that the cottage court proposal, at its most basic, they don't see a major concern with us allowing this, and ultimately we'll have the opportunity to review individual proposals when they come forward.
So you're telling me, that you have made contact or communicated with fire, police, and all of those. But do you think it would be prudent to really begin to look at, out of all of the, let's say, for example, right now, that we have 100 current properties right now that meet the requirements for a cottage court? Wouldn't it be prudent to go and do an assessment and find out how many can we really put up? I think that's important to know. What are we getting into? I mean, I did a little snooping, I'll be honest with you. Just kind of looking at properties, looking at the size of it, looking at the trees, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm saying, well, this one I don't think meets the definition. Oh, who's going to do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole, questions?
Megan, going back to the Veridian's comments or concerns, just wanted to, I think I know the answer to this, but we passed this resolution today, this ordinance change today. We can always come back in the future and have further discussion, just like we did for the ADUs that has really transformed over the years. So it's not like we're saying no to that. It's just like tonight really is not the best time to make a change like that. We can actually just take some more time to dig into it into the future, right?
Certainly. As with a lot of the smaller housing types you mentioned, ADUs, we have continued to tweak those over time as we've learned about what some of the barriers are and the successful ways that we could overcome them. As we've worked on developing the initial standards for allowing cottage courts, we anticipate that as folks try to pursue these, have some experience under their belt implementing them, that we'll learn some lessons that will probably inform future changes.
Thank you. Just want to make that clear. This is not just the end. This is just the beginning of a new housing format. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Vitever?
Thank you. Okay, so we have questions from a particular member of my district. So can I ask about parking? So apparently the staff memo states that parking areas may include surface parking, detached shared garages, and carports. What will prevent multi-story parking garages by right in these districts?
I'll let Katie jump in here too if she has any perspectives, but Alder, I would ultimately expect that garages in the sense that we're probably typically thinking of would be precluded by the size of the properties that this use is limited to. So cottage courts are permissible on properties between 10,000 square feet and an acre. So ultimately fitting a parking structure with all of its circulation to access a second level in the way that we traditionally think about ramps would likely not fit on a property of that size, along with those freestanding structures that it's serving. But Katie, I don't know if you have any other perspectives in terms of the actual code administration and parking.
I can just say with things of this scale, we're not seeing parking garages just because financially it doesn't make sense. It's going to be a surface parking or a garage that would have several bays within it rather than structured parking kind of situation.
And then there's also concern about a lack of landscaping and screening requirements. Would that be something that would be addressed in when actual plans were brought forward?
Katie, do you want to speak to that one?
Sure. Yeah. So, this would be looked at like single and two family homes throughout the city where we're not requiring landscaping on private property for those properties. And we wouldn't require that for cottage courts either. However, I think we would expect that because there's going to be these setbacks and yards that there will be plantings of various types there, but the zoning code would not require certain landscaping. A lot of it, though, the cottage court is intended to fit in within existing 1 and 2 family neighborhoods. That's why it has similar setbacks and scale. So it doesn't seem like we would need like landscape screening like we do in some districts where we're thinking there's a commercial use next to a residential use. These are really intended to fit into the neighborhood as a permitted use.
And then there's a question about park user fees. And this has come up actually in several spaces with ADUs, obviously multifamily units, and why we don't provide any kind of, shall we say, discount on park user fees based on the size of the dwelling unit.
Great question. I think ultimately that would be a policy choice that the city would be welcome to consider if it were to be interested in any type of housing unit having alternative park user fees. I would say that very likely that would need to be connected to any update to any impact fee ordinances that we already have, which have determined the basis for those fees.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Knox, questions?
Yeah, my question is, so in the definition of cottage house, does this include modular homes?
Go ahead, Katie.
It could. The zoning code does not define modular homes any different from any kind of other kind of construction. They have to meet building code, but they could be fully assembled and brought on site, or they could be partially assembled and brought on site and assembled that way as a modular home. But the zoning code would just consider it a 1 or 2 family dwelling like any other.
Okay, but so is there a distinction for like trailers, permanently foundation trailers? That would be modular too, right? So you said that's okay as well?
If it's a manufactured home,
Yes.
or
It is a manufactured home.
yeah, where it has the stamp on it, the code could look at that differently. But most homes of what we're seeing today are more that modular manufactured home, not the kind of pre-manufactured trailer home.
Okay, but I'm just trying to wonder, because in that definition, technically a manufactured home could be a trailer. And are we going to allow that? And so I'm just trying to get a visual of what these cottage courts look like. You know what I mean? So it would fit in that definition? I guess that's my real question.
They would be treated no differently than single family homes throughout the city. Same requirements apply to cottage courts and what that structure can look like, other than some of the entrance orientation things that have already been mentioned. But otherwise, the construction can be the same as the construction of homes that would allowed on any other single or 2 family lot within the city.
Okay, so, but my question, I guess, get to if someone just put a trailer there on a foundation, that would meet the requirements
It would have to
of
meet
cottage home?
it would have to meet building code requirements. It couldn't be like a manufactured home park, if that's what you're getting at.
No, I'm just saying, but a park has lots of them. What about one on a lot that already has a house on it? I'm just trying to figure out, does that meet the requirement or not? Or is that something different? A trailer home?
I think what I'm hearing. Go ahead, Katie.
Well, a mobile home is treated differently than a manufactured home. It's relatively rare that we have mobile homes. We do have a district that allows mobile homes, but manufactured homes could be allowed in any residential lot in the city.
So the
where
key
a
would
single family is
be
allowed.
it has to be a foundation into the property to make it not a mobile home, I would assume.
I think that's relatively fair. Let me look at the actual definition. Maybe I can provide
Because
more
if you look
clarity.
at the definition of a manufactured home, that's a broad definition. So I'm just trying to figure out, does that meet the definition of a cottage or not? So, but you may not know the answer to that question.
And ultimately, I think one of the pieces that Katie was saying is that when we look beyond the construction of the individual single family or 2-unit homes that are within a cottage court, the placement of those homes would also have to meet the standards for a cottage court. So in the example that you offered, Alder, of somebody putting a trailer home behind an existing home, maybe or maybe not. It ultimately depends on whether or not things like the provision of the actual courtyard, whether the front doors could be facing the locations that are required by the standards. Some of those things could ultimately be met. So it goes beyond just the building typology, but would also require compliance with the other standards of the cottage court ordinance.
Okay, thank you. I think.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions, Alder Pritchett? Alder Pritchett, you're muted.
Alder Knox, you raised some good questions. And I say that primarily because, in my travels, I have seen some very, very elegant, and I do mean
Alder,
elegant.
is there a question?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a question. What about yurts? YURTS. yurts.
We didn't bring Director Tucker here tonight to talk about all of the building code iterations of what a single family home could be. Katie, do you have any insights on what we consider to be a single family home in that case?
Yeah, in our experience, when someone's talking about a yurt, it's not something that would meet our building code and would not be allowed. We'd have to actually see the building details, but from what I've seen, that they're looking for something that's not permanent, that doesn't have a permanent foundation, which is not allowed under our building code.
But here in
permanent
Wisconsin,
structure to live in.
there are permanently structured yurts in Wisconsin. They have foundations. They have sewer mains. They're Airbnbs.
I think ultimately, like the question about mobile homes, the construction of the homes themselves would be required to meet any other codes that would be applicable for the dwelling to be a permanent dwelling on a site and a permanent habitable dwelling on the site. So the cottage court ordinance definition does not get into any of these specific construction typologies, but relies on our building codes to guide what kind of buildings could be permissible, as long as whatever is included within this meets our zoning definitions of a 1 or 2 family home.
All right, thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue for questions. So item 16 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Alder Martinez Rutherford.
Thank you very much. This is an initiative that has been very close to my heart, and I've spent 3 years working on, and I'm very proud of where we are. And if my colleagues would do a simple Google search on what a cottage court looks like, which these are not new housing options, they are new housing options to Madison. And the purpose is to hopefully meet some of the missing middle and softer density and possibly a collective ownership of land and more communal living. These are not intended to be trailer courts, as we have a zoning specifically designed for that. They are to be ways to increase density and increase community, as well as giving more housing options to people who are now facing a lot of anxiety over how they're going to remain in Madison, where they're going to remain. And as somebody who has heard a lot of constituents ask for seniors to be able to have more options, I think this is an option that could be very beneficial in the future once we work out some of the details and kind of see what it looks like in practice. These options will be available throughout the city in a way that can be transformative to infill development and giving housing options to people. These have been very popular from my constituency, as well as many of the constituents around the city who have reached out to me to say, thank you for driving this initiative. And I would love you to be able to look at other cities and towns who are doing cottage courts. They are beautiful, they are transformative, and they create a very beautiful pocket neighborhood that really instills community. So as many detractors as there are, this is something I have intimate experience with throughout the country, and have seen how other cities, as well as other cities, have employed a cottage court framework or a bungalow court framework. And I believe that this is a really great start to providing more of that housing and charm that we need that may not be present in newer developments as they are right now. So thank you very much, and I hope that you will all support this.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be supporting this. I recall when I first became an alder that a developer said that he was avoiding Madison because of the paperwork, the restrictions that disallowed him for doing his small development. And so I am supporting that. This is clear to me. It's not tied in or there's not a trail to it because the other amendment that attached something with housing. And this is very clear. And the more that Madison opens up and allows developers with integrity to come in and create these spaces, it's a good thing. And so I will be supporting this because it's a standalone. It's not something that was attached to something else. I had a problem with tacking on something else to something that we all understand that's really critically important to Madison. And this is a standalone, and I definitely will be supporting this. And I would hope that the alders will be on the same page. It's very rare that we are, but I am on the same page and I will be supporting this. Thank you, and I am complete.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Field?
Thank you, Mayor. To be brief, I represent a part of the city, much of which is not yet built out. So there's a lot of space where cottage courts can go out here in the future, and I hope to see some as these neighborhoods do begin to build out, as we extend services further and as property owners bring proposals. I think we're going to learn a lot when people take a serious look at now a new option that they have and give us feedback, and we can make tweaks accordingly. But in general, I'm really excited that we have this new option and can play with some more ideas. I want to recognize that doing so and finding a code framework that will work here and authorize that takes a lot of work. So I want to thank all of the zoning and planning staff who spent time figuring out how to do this here too. I can see that you've been have been creative and responsive and have played with many new ideas. So let's see what these can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Pritchett?
It's not that I'm not supporting this, but I do think we have to be mindful of where. We also need to know pretty much what do we gain as a result of doing that, especially in well-established neighborhoods. I'm thinking too about the disruption. I'm thinking too about fire services and other services that will be needed for those individuals who are now living in a cottage court home. Those are the kinds of things that I think we have to think about, especially if we're trying to encourage people, to be a little bit more open in doing so. If we don't do that, and then all of a sudden you have your next door neighbor who's bitching and complaining about it, that presents a problem in terms of turning people off negatively to the whole idea of cottage court homes. So those things I think we need to think about, especially when we look at, have we done an assessment to find out how many current properties are eligible for, meeting the requirements for a cottage court home. Beyond that, going back to what Alder Field is saying, for some of the newer developments where they do have, the space and the land to do that, I welcome that idea. But I also think too, for well-established neighborhoods, we have to think about what are we doing, what are we creating for those individuals, especially the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Alder Martinez Rutherford for all the hard work on this. It showed a lot of initiative and determination and passion to make this step forward. We actually do have, I think, a cottage court in Madison. The Norris Court apartments are kind of laid out like a cottage court. So this is not entirely new. And as the city grows and evolves, we desperately need to be exploring various types of housing that can accommodate that growth. Things are not going to stay static, and we can't be the fastest growing city in Wisconsin with all that dynamism unless we are dynamic in our approach to accommodating that rising population. So thank you for all the hard work and putting this forward. You deserve a lot of credit. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. Alder Martinez Rutherford.
I'll be really brief. This has been 3 years of a labor of love, and zoning and planning have been immensely beneficial in this process. And we have thought about all of the questions that Alder Pritchett, I know that you have. We have been very thoughtful about those things, and the team behind us have as well. And I would like to thank the council members who have supported me on this, and as well as the mayor for really helping give a new vision to something that is working in other cities around the country, and really bringing life to a lot of people who need it. So thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Now I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. Anticipating a small amount of disagreement. All those in favor of item 16, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Alder Tischler? Aye. Verveer? Aye. Fittiver? Aye. Duncan?
Aye.
Aye. Evers? Aye. Field?
Aye.
Aye. Figueroa Cole? Aye. Glenn?
Aye.
Aye. Govindarajan? Aye. Ugair? Aye. Harrington McKinney?
Aye.
Aye. Lankella? Aye. Knox?
Aye.
Aye. Madison?
Aye.
Aye. Martinez Rutherford? Aye for Martinez Rutherford. Matthews?
Aye.
Aye. Mayor? Aye. O'Brien? Aye. Okovich? Aye. Pritchett?
Aye.
Aye. It's 20 ayes.
With 20 ayes, item 16 will pass. And that will bring us to the end of our agenda. Are there any additional introductions from the floor? Alder Harrington McKinney?
Madam Mayor, let us acknowledge that this is the first time in a while that 20 alders said an aye. I could not let that pass. I'm complete.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any additional introductions from the floor? Seeing none, then are there any announcements? President Vittiver.
Just a reminder, next week, Tuesday, we will have our Common Council discussion on all the ways our departments in the city of Madison protect and promote our lakes.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Tischler?
I have a District 11 book club tomorrow talking about assisted living and hospice, and everyone's welcome to attend. It's Judy Karofsky's book on diselderly conduct.
Thank you, Alder. Any other announcements? Seeing none, then the discussion meeting notwithstanding, this is our last official council meeting of the year. So I'd like to wish everyone a happy holidays of your choice. And we will see you all in the new year. And Alder Tischler, it is your turn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of adjournment? Seeing no objection, we stand adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.